Welcome back to a True Kings podcast. I'm your host, LJ Johnson. Today, I wanted to kind of go over something that's really just been kind of at the top of my head recently, and that is the thought process of logically thinking. Now, I'm someone, if you've ever met me in real life, clearly you probably tell by watching me on here, listening to me, is I'm someone who I'm a very deep thinker, very logical thinker. Um, and it sometimes causes me to overthink about certain situations. And while it can be a blessing, it can also be sometimes a hindrance, in my personal opinion. And you'll see what I mean. So the reason I really have started to really look at the way I think logically as essentially a hindrance to my own personal self and to many others as well is because a lot of times it can allow you to really enjoy the benefits or the fruits of living life. For example, you go out here and because of your logical thinking, you kind of sit there and think about the types of trouble you can get in and all this other stuff. And while I'm someone who believes that nowadays a lot of us can't afford to sit there and go out and not live our lives and in a level of, or let me rephrase, a lot of us can't sit there and go out and live our lives at a level of ignorance. And I'm not saying live our lives at a level of ignorance every day, but I'm saying it would be nice every once in a while to be able to go out and enjoy that. Enjoy that level of ignorance that we could potentially live in. The only problem is living in potential ignorance can get you, into lots of trouble nowadays. But I'm currently struggling with the mix of trying to find the balance of living in ignorance but also living with logic. I'm someone who I've really started to really think with a level of logic when I was in high school. It was something that was very not really important to me, but the reason I started to think about it when I was in high school more and more, the logical ways to do things wasn't because of the things I was hearing in my household, which was my parents constantly telling me, hey, think before you speak and all this other stuff. It was really due to the fact of seeing what other people would do, other people my age, younger, even older, and really being all around me just started to really sit there and think to myself, why in the world do we do these certain things when the clear answer is right in front of us? Why do we go the whole opposite direction? I mean, it's a pure question that I think we have to start asking ourselves. When the answer is right in front of us, why in the world do we choose to do the opposite thing? When there's a clear, logical way to get something done correctly, the right choice, why do we tend to rebel and go do the other thing? Is it the thrill of the other thing? Like, what is it? And this was something that, like I said, I struggle with completely in terms of trying to really figure out for myself personally. There have been plenty of times where people have come and they've talked about their feelings, and a lot of people have come and told me that they enjoy talking to me about, the things in their life. I'm someone who I'm very easy to talk to, but I'm also someone who I keep it a buck with you. Like, I'm going to keep it a buck with you and tell you the logical ways of things and the logical answer. And it gets really frustrating at times when you see people kind of not, it's like they listen, but they don't. It's like they hear what you're saying, but they still choose to do the opposite. And then they come back and complain about the same exact thing as if you didn't just give them the answer in the first place. And like I said, this is something that can be very, very frustrating at times and can be very hard and difficult to deal with in terms of talking to people whenever they want to come and talk about situations in their life, their emotions, and all this other stuff. To the point to where, and I'm someone who I'm very big on this, there's a certain extent to where you can go and talk to people about a certain thing before that person explodes. To the point to where, because I think so logically, but they're coming from it from a very feelings based perspective, right? Versus my perspective, it can really start to affect my mindset as well. And that's not good, but it's something that I see within a lot of people, if you catch my drift. I think the biggest place for myself into why I really started to think like this, though, recently within the last year, is when it came to relationships. There was this statistic that came out earlier. It might have been earlier this year. It might have came out years ago, but I really saw it earlier this year, where it stated that the smarter a person is, the more logically based they think, the harder it is for them to get into relationships. Simply because, and like I didn't see why that was the case, but simply because it said that, I came up with the conclusion it was because that many people go into relationships from an emotional perspective, but not a logical perspective. But when thinking about that, I really dug deep down into it in my own thoughts, of course, like I said. And I thought to myself, well, if you can't sit there and be in a relationship with some level of ignorance, how can you expect to really gain the full blown emotional capacity of love and not really sit there and think about the financial aspects? You see, when sitting here and thinking about it, I think a lot of us have this tendency to think about the logical things in terms of relationships, right? Such as the financial stability, I think, is the biggest part in many people's decisions and who they choose as a suitable partner. The only problem with that is there are plenty of people out here that choose the financial stability, but they completely ignore all the other things that this person can provide. Now, do I think financial stability is important? Of course, I do think that. I think your significant other should have some level of drive to them, but your significant other doesn't have to be the most successful financially in order for them to make you happy. If you're only choosing based strictly off of financial stability, then you're never going to be happy. Your partner should be able to provide for you emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of it, not just in terms of financial status. In fact, in my personal opinion, and it could be because I am a young 22-year-old man, but in my personal opinion, financial stability is the last thing I'm looking for in terms of a significant other. Yes, I would want her to have a drive, but at the same time, stability isn't the biggest thing that is for me. How can she provide for me emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of it? Not just in terms of how can she be my peace? That's where that comes in. But this is really the nit and gritty of it. And I'm not the type that's going to come on here anymore. I'm too grown for that now. I used to come on here and talk about my heartbreaks and all that stuff. And I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is this. What really made me really sit here and think about this is recently I got out of a relationship about a couple months ago. And I wasn't that hurt by it, which is good, right? But I was pretty checked out. But the one thing I really noticed about myself at the end of the relationship was a simple fact that I felt like the whole relationship, I was preparing for the end. Why was I doing that in a relationship? And it could have been because of past experiences, but let's be honest, it also was because of my logical thinking. Constantly thinking logically throughout the relationships while trying to live in a level of ignorance to the point to where I can gain love for the person that I was with, it didn't work for me. One, because I probably wasn't all that interested in her in the end, and there was a lot of things that caused me to check out. Same for her. But it almost felt like I was waiting for the end, as if I was looking for the end. It's like, well, one, I could feel it coming, but at the same time, it was each and every single moment it was almost like I was looking over my shoulder from past trauma in terms of how can this person, like, will this person just up and leave if I sit there and give too much of myself, right? And with that logical thinking, while that was the case of my thinking, it felt like I wasn't living at a level of ignorance in terms of the relationship to the point to where I didn't allow myself to really feel like how I wanted to feel. And at the moment where I did almost feel how I wanted to feel, it's almost like I would back up. And I could probably sit there and say it was the same for her as well. But for me specifically, and that's who we're focused on, is me, it felt like I would back up because of the level of what's it called, logic that I kept trying to indulge into my thought process on and focus on the things that she may not do versus the things that she was doing. And yeah, in the end, I think my logic protected me from being like heartbroken and all that other stuff. And it allowed me to become check out when I needed to become check out. Because it did sit there and because my logic did sit there and show me, hey, she is the things that you're worried about. Those are things you have to be worried about. While that's a good thing, I also think it didn't allow me to fully feel like I wanted to feel. And I think that's something in all areas of life is sometimes you just have to let God really play things out and really it's hard. It's hard. Because sometimes you really just want the best for yourself and you really want to do the things yourself and patience is really difficult. But it's a hard thing to explain. Logic is a hard thing to explain. It's hard to live in ignorance when you've been hurt before. It's hard to live in ignorance when you feel like you can't trust. It's hard to feel in ignorance. Even when you do feel like you can trust that person or trust whatever situation you're in, regardless if it's relationships, business, or whatever, it's hard to sit there and live in ignorance because the whole time in the back of your head is like you got something telling you just continue to have a level head. And it's hard. It's very difficult. I know I may be stuttering over my words a lot, but this is really just something that just came to the top of my head today to really talk about. Because like I told y'all, I have so many ideas for my podcast, for this podcast in my head. And like this one, whenever I record, I just have to feel it. And today I just felt this one. And so it's all just coming out about how I feel really. And like I said, like to me, I'm currently in a state of trying to balance logic, but also balance a level of ignorance to where I can enjoy the life I want to live. And man, it's something that takes practice for sure. There's a reason in the Bible, while the Bible very much tells you that you should live a very logical life, it also tells you not to lean on your own understanding. And that is something I think so many of us, from myself to a lot of my friends to just about everyone, struggles with the most, is to lean not on your own understanding and lean on the Lord's understanding. But I can sit there and tell you that there's been plenty of moments where I've leaned on the Lord's understanding, especially this year, more than any other year, honestly, and I've been able to really cope with the fact of things happening so much better, no matter how difficult it was, you know? And like I said, like it's a very difficult process, but it's a process that you just got to learn in terms of life, in terms of being, a human being, in terms of being a woman, or in terms of being a man. Is something that we just got to learn as people, to learn to not lean on our own understanding. And sometimes that logic is really, while it's protecting you, sometimes you got to think about it. Maybe it's the Lord that's protecting you, sitting there telling you that this ain't it. You know what I'm saying? You never know. So my logic is definitely the biggest reason why I created this podcast. As you guys know, I had an old YouTube channel that's still up. It's mainly got music on there now. But the thing about it is, like, my old YouTube channel was what this was supposed to be. But being 18, 19 years old at the time when that channel was created, no one would take me serious in terms of like just being a very logical person. Many people would sit there and be like, "Oh, you're so young." Even now, people still say I'm very young and I still got a lot to learn. It don't matter how old you are. You never stop learning. There are plenty of things that I think, like even my own parents, my grandparents, pastor, everybody, it don't matter how old you are, you never stop learning. There are things that people that are younger than you can teach you. There are things that people that are older than you can teach you. It don't matter how old you are. You never stop learning. But that's the reason I created this channel, this podcast, is because I wanted people to really see the logical side of me, but also the side that's the more mature side, the side that's growing as a man, as a human being, the side that comes with no judgment, the side that comes with integrity, and that's the side I want people to see. And like I said, the logical side of me is very important, but also growing to sit there and understand that the ignorant side, the side that lives in naivety is just as important as the side that lives in logic. There there are two sides to just about everything that you don't know. Good, evil, coins, people. There's two sides to just about everything. And sometimes you don't ever know the side that people struggle with or the side that they're most happy with. And for me, I think I've truly learned my logical side, but I have not learned my naivety side, my ignorant side. And I think that's what I think like in terms, like I said, in terms of my most recent relationship, that is what I think God wanted me to really have an understanding of, is to learn how to lean on His understanding more and to really understand the not naive side of myself, because it's a very difficult side to understand when you've been living in logic. Just like how so many of y'all have been living in naivety, it's a very difficult side for y'all to live in logic, you know. Um, but yeah, like that's just what it is in life. But anyway, this was a quick podcast episode. I really just wanted to get this off my chest real quick and get something back up here, because I know it's been a couple weeks since I last posted on here, and I know I said I was going to be more consistent. My finals for this semester are about to come up, so I've really been focused on school still, my job and everything. I can't wait to really get back to where this is strictly program. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like, I still got so many ideas for this podcast, and I know y'all gonna be along with me, and I really appreciate each and every single one of y'all. But anyway, remember to like, comment, subscribe, go follow the social medias, and y'all stay blessed. Peace.